So, about a few weeks ago, I noticed something interesting happening in my life. I started, getting ready to decorate a little bit, pieces here and there in my home for Advent and for Christmas. Now, why is this of note? So I think I've written this on my blog a long time before, and maybe talked about this in my podcast in 2020. But Christmas is not a happy time for me. Without really consciously knowing why, I've come to dread Christmas. Okay, so now I'm aware. After I began the interior journey intentionally and healing, I've become aware of why. But for many years, I don't look forward to Christmas at all. In fact, everything in me tenses up as we get closer to Christmas. It's like I'm primed for fight or flight. I'm primed for things going wrong. I'm primed for tempers flaring, in the home. I'm primed for the stress and the rush of having to go to different maybe gatherings, long gatherings, having to pose for pictures. There are a lot of to-dos. There are a lot of shoulds. And all through it, supposed to be happy, right? Smile, be smiling for photographs. And on just so many levels, I think I go through the season just going through the motions. There was one Christmas, this was quite many years ago too, but do you know I broke down at the end of that Christmas day because it was actually a relatively conflict-free, drama-free, and happy Christmas the whole day. And just for that, I cried out of relief, out of gratitude. But I think that day it kind of struck me how the other normal Christmases have been, how stressed I've been, how hyper-vigilant I've always been. Now, amidst all that, as a Christian and as a Catholic, the few weeks before Christmas, there are a lot of things happening too. I mean, we enter a new liturgical season, of Advent. There are a lot of ritual reflections, the readings, the scriptures. They're all beautiful. And if you're engaged with it, I say that because I think it's a big assumption that just because you're a Christian or a Catholic that you're necessarily engaged with what's happening liturgically, with the church calendar and in the church. But so if you're engaged liturgically, actually there's also a lot of things happening, right? And there are two sides to that. There is a good side in the sense like, there's a lot of richness in the tradition, in the rituals, and they are meant to bring us deeper into the mystery. But, there's a huge but there. For a lot of people, even if they are starting to get engaged, it can be too much, too soon, in too short a time. And when you want to be involved and engaged, you can actually burn out because there's just so much going on in your own personal life, with family, with work, with whatever else is happening. And then if you really want to be present as well to every little, thing that's going on in the liturgy, with the symbolism and the ritual, sometimes we think that that's what it means to become a more active disciple or more engaged Catholic, right? Maybe it's one dimension of it. Certainly, I think in a particular season of our growth, that is appropriate. But I went through many years of that. And Christmas didn't change. So this is what I mean by being un-PC. Okay? Christmas for me didn't change by being more present to what's happening in the liturgy, by reflecting more on the scripture of Advent. Why? In those moments when I'm praying, in those moments when I'm meditating on these mysteries, in those times when I'm participating maybe in some kind of retreat or service, yes, I may be able to enter more into the reason for the season, right? I may feel like I encounter God a little bit more. I may experience some semblance of peace. But the moment that ends, the moment I step back into real life, nothing has changed. where did we get the assumption that if we pray, by that I mean we do prayer, or we attend Mass, or that we, follow the liturgical calendar and do reflections on Advent, for example, where did we assume that that would naturally translate to transformation in our lives, in our own lives, or transformation in our environment? Okay, so clearly, I think a lot of us may be praying for change in the people around us, in the situation around us. That's not the main thing, right, about Christmas. It isn't about changing other people to make life easier for us. But how many of us actually really experience real change in ourselves as well? So from one Christmas to the next Christmas to the next Christmas, how many Christmases go by where we do the same kind of reflection, we meditate on the same kind of mysteries about hope, about anticipation, about Jesus coming, about God being with us, and does the mystery actually become flesh in us? We hear these words, we read these words, we hear these words preached, during homilies in this season. But hearing them do not make it real in our lives, right? Because hearing them did not make it real in my life. So coming back to what I said at the start of this video so far, this year was interesting because when I first got married, and that was like 15 years ago, my husband, who is actually the adult convert, is the one who would get excited as we approached Christmas and want to start decorating the house. I could care less, really. I'm not somebody that's very arts and crafty, so I don't love decorating things for decoration's sake, because all that tidying up and tearing down is so much work. Both putting up and tearing down is so much work. But another thing, the more important thing is, I don't have any joyful or happy memories really about doing that and about Christmas. So why would I look forward to getting ready for Christmas, right? Even just the decorations, for example. And slowly, over the years of marriage, I suppose the happy relationship and the deepening, healthy relationship I have with my husband helped to heal some of my memories of Christmas. But, it kind of made the hypervigilance and the fear lessen a little bit. by quite a big deal, I suppose, but not entirely. My nervous system is still wired, I can still feel Christmas coming. Part of it is that there's a restless energy and there's some anxiety, very underlying. There's an undercurrent there. But he used to be the one that would get excited, and then maybe I will pick up a bit on that energy and start joining him in decorating. But the first few years of our marriage, I told him it was all up to him. I'm not going to help with decorating the house for Christmas. That's how much I didn't want. That was when I think I was be able to be honest. I didn't want to help decorate for Christmas. So this year, remarkably, I think the first year that I started before he did. So in the last few years, I've been participating. I've been enjoying the process, of making the home, a bit more festive. But this year is the first time, because he's been really busy, that I started thinking ahead and ordering things and started putting things up. Not everything yet, but. And it just struck me, what has happened? How did this change? Because something real has shifted. And it's not from reading anything, and I can tell you very honestly, it's not from doing prayer or making any Advent reflections. I've done so many years of Advent reflections, and like I said, there is a wall they can't break through. Okay, so this is where I say if you're in a season where you feel you're growing really well, with everything that you're doing, that's great. There are seasons, right? But if you resonate with what I'm sharing, if you are really trying and you are praying and you're trying to participate in, retreats and reflections and doing your own meditations and Advent journaling and all that kind of thing, and you find that there's a wall, right? At some point, or you're feeling discouraged because year in, year out, the reality doesn't seem to have shifted much. I want to say something that's different from the usual platitudes we get, in the spiritual space or faith space. I call them platitudes because it's not that they're not true entirely. When we say have faith, you can't see what's happening, but sometimes something real is really happening. God is doing something and working something out, in you or for you. It's true. I'm saying that there's truth in that. But it becomes a platitude when that's where we stop. Nobody tells us, nobody told me, what's my part in the concrete how? How do I cooperate with God as He is doing what is unknown, unseen, what I cannot see in my life? How do I respond? And I don't mean just generalities, right? But how can I concretely respond to grace that maybe I may not be able to see, so that something real changes, so that God can transform me? Because God's not going to transform me without my willingness, without my participation, right? Without my response. So what does that response look like? And I just want to say, if we get really gritty and really real about it, we have to face up and call out where there's, the truth that in our lives there are a lot of double standards. Okay, you don't have to go public about it, right? We don't have to tell everybody about it. But we can notice things like, for example, maybe, we are very active in church and we are participating, we're singing, let's say in a choir, or we in a Christmas pageant, we are participating in some ways. But on the back end, in our families, we're shouting at our kids or shouting at our spouse because, we're running late to go to church, or we're so stressed out with all the things that we're doing out there to do the Christmassy thing, to do the Advent thing, that we have no capacity and bandwidth to just be human, to acknowledge our vulnerabilities, our limits with our children. Why is it that we're not just spending time with our children or with our spouses, or to tend to the healing that we need? Why do so many of us need to go out and show that we are good, practicing, actively engaged Christians and Catholics, especially in this season, right? Christmas and maybe Easter. So I just want to call that out in you if there is that happening. And it may be very harsh for you to hear this from me. Maybe you're not ready to really acknowledge that. But I have lived through it my whole life. I have seen it happen in so many people. I know it's not funny at all what people do to be pleasing to others, to their community, so that people will think well of them. Not because they're prideful. I'll tell you the truth, most of the time is because deep down we're very insecure, even those of us who seem to do very well. And we need the validation and the praise and the affirmation of others so much that we cannot not live double lives. That's so sad. Don't you think so? So I just want to say, maybe, in the last 10 days to Christmas, instead of just doing the usual automatic thing about let's do the Christmas novena, let's do this, all this religious stuff, liturgical stuff, pause for a moment and get real. How have these things actually transformed you? How has God transformed you through any of these practices that you've done habitually over the years? Because if it's not helping you become more real with God and with yourself, if it's not helping you to become more authentic, to be able to see yourself more clearly, to surrender yourself more fully in this relationship with God, guess what? They're not really helpful. And maybe you should think about finding something else, some other way to journey towards Christmas that can actually help you become more real, more authentic, and move towards integration.